Welcome, folks, to today's meeting of the Business and Culture Committee. Obviously, welcome all the members here in the chamber. Welcome Maria and Jilly from the Arts Council. And I'd like to welcome everybody that's here in the public gallery supporting Echo. So you're very welcome. So I'm going to ask the director to take us through the notice and summons of meeting and the members' attendance and apology. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So members, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of Business and Culture Committee. So we had hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber, Derry Road, Strabane. So we'll take a roll call. Alderman Cook.
Online, Stephen.
Alderman Guy.
Here, Stephen.
Alderman Middleton.
Here, Stephen, online.
Councillor Boyle.
Online, Stephen.
Councillor Duffy.
And Shaw.
Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Harkin. Councillor Hart.
And Shaw.
Councillor Heaney.
And Shaw, earlier.
Councillor Hutton.
And Shaw.
Councillor McDade. Councillor Mooney. Councillor Farrell. And Councillor Neelis.
And Shaw.
Thank you, members.
So I would like to remind everyone physically present at this meeting or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to be informed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council privacy notice may be found on the Council website, derrystrabane.com. So the first item today is around the really disappointing news that Echo has lost its core funding from the Arts Council. This issue has been discussed and debated in various council meetings since that news broke. And at a recent meeting, we asked that members of the Arts Council and members from the Department for Communities attend this meeting to give some background to that decision and to address wider funding concerns across the Northwest. So today we are joined by Maria Fox and Jilly. And first of all, ladies, I really thank you for coming. I wish it was under better circumstances. I wish you were here to talk about more investment in the Northwest, about really valued organisations that operate across this city and district, getting more money to deliver better programmes, to make them a bit more financially sustainable, etc. But we're not. And we're here to discuss the tragic news that Echo, which is a really valued organisation across this city and district, a really loved organisation across this city and district, has lost its funding from the Arts Council. Echo has been a client of the Arts Council for a considerable period of time. My understanding is that it had 32 consecutive successful funding applications until very recently. They applied this year for funding. They were previously in receipt of around £113,000 a year to cover staff costs, utility costs, help with renting the premises that they have on a really prominent position on the city walls. And that funding was removed. the application was unsuccessful. The £112,000 a year that they need to maintain the programming of that organisation has been removed completely. So essentially, unless there's an injection of funding in the very near future, Echo is going to close its doors. And the programme of events, the space that they provide, is going to be lost to our entire community. We understand that Echo requested a review of that decision. The independent review was completed quite recently. That decision was upheld. So that's obviously very, very disappointing. Echo and members across this chamber, and I'm going to declare an interest. I'm a member of the co-delivery group, which is a body made up of elected members, council officers, and representatives from the arts and culture sector, which is, I think, unique across the north. I'm a member of that. I'm fully engaged in that process, and we're here to fight for Echo. We're here to fight for investment in the northwest. So we're unhappy with the process. We're unhappy with the outcome, as are, I would imagine, every single person in the public gallery. So I'm going to open this up to members. I know that members are going to have specific questions around the process, specific questions about the outcome. But I want to touch on one myself, and it's regarding the assessors' reports. So we understand that any organisation that applies for the annual funding programme, there's an assessment that's done, and the outcome of that assessment will determine whether they get funded or not. And I know there are certain criteria there about artistic quality, sustainability of the organisation, etc., etc. So in terms of the assessment reports, and I've spoken to representatives from the board of Echo, they had no understanding of the existence of these assessors' reports. They had no understanding of the content of these assessors' reports, and they had no understanding of the impact of these assessors' reports. So the most recent one, the one that we're here to discuss, has resulted in a decision not to fund this organisation. So my question is, when the Arts Council makes a decision on funding, and bear in mind that Echo have had 32 previous funding letters which were successful, why is that not accompanied by a copy of the assessor's report? Because I've been furnished with them now. I've seen that since probably about 2021, they've got progressively worse, to a stage where the latest report has resulted in no funding going to the Arts Council. So my question is, we understand that these exist, but organisations, and this is not just Echo, there are a lot of organisations across this city and district who receive funding from the Arts Council who aren't aware of these assessors' reports. And there could be stuff on there that's cause for concern that could, in the future, lead to a negative funding application. So my question is, ladies, why, when a decision on funding, successful or unsuccessful, why are the applicants not, as a routine, provided with the assessor's report? Because if Echo were aware of the concerns in 2021, 2022, 2023, it could have changed how they operated, and we might not be in this position today. So I would appreciate some feedback on that. And then I'm going to open it up to the floor to the other members. Thank you.
I have to push. Oh, yes. So just to indicate, first of all, that the guidance notes obviously clearly indicate that an assessment is done, and obviously it makes complete sense that assessments are done as part of this process, and therefore an assessment exists for every application that's considered in relation to this program and every program that we run. Those assessments are freely available to any kind of applicant who requests them, and people often do. Sometimes people request them, although they've actually received funding, they ask to see a copy of the report. So at any point, if Echo had asked for a copy of the report, we would of course provided it. And I have to say it's unusual that they didn't ask for it, given that they were pursuing a kind of a funding review. That's not very typical. But how any group approaches their funding review process is obviously entirely a matter for that organisation itself and their board. So normally people would ask for it prior to or sometimes after the mandatory discussion meeting that we have with groups, which is a preliminary stage prior to them kind of submitting a funding review. And we held the mandatory meeting with, but the nature of the meeting itself was quite unusual in relation to how that was also approached by Echo. Normally that's more of a discussion at which the feedback which has already been given, which is the first stage of the review, is usually kind of discussed. And at that point, if people haven't already asked for their assessment report, they normally ask for it at that point following the meeting. Written feedback had already been given to Echo, which was essentially summations of the issues that were raised in the report in more detail. I really don't think there were any kind of issues that were omitted from that initial kind of written feedback. As I say, we went to the kind of mandatory meeting, the pre-meet, and rather than kind of having discussion, Echo chose to kind of present, to give us a kind of a 10-minute prepared statement, which we listened to. There wasn't, but they, as I say, subsequent to that, they didn't ask for their assessment report until after the fact and after they'd seen the review. If you're asking why we don't give them out routinely, compiling the assessment report is actually, you have to kind of bring information from a variety of pages, a variety of kind of areas, including sets of minutes and also our grant management system. There's a bit of work involved in that. We're actually kind of a very small team, and the actual kind of getting that together and then issuing those with every kind of funding decision, or whether it's a rejection or a letter of offer, would actually be a considerable amount of work, and we actually wouldn't have the staff resources to kind of initiate that sort of procedure. We've never approached it in that way, but as I say, anybody who asks for their assessment report always has it, and routinely organisations do.
If I can just add as well, it wouldn't be, I'm sure Derry City and Surrounding District Councils don't provide an assessment with your letters of offer. It wouldn't be usual practice for funders. I'm not aware of any funder, but as Maria said, we would provide the assessment reports when they're requested. And indeed, I think as Maria said, often organisations, even when they've received funding, and it may be even the funding they've requested, will ask to see the assessment. So it's not unusual.
Okay, thank you, ladies. So the first indicated speaker is Councillor Anelis. So Grace.
Rory, and thank you very much for coming in today to have this discussion with us. We do really appreciate it. I'm just going to follow on from Rory's question in terms of the assessment. So, I mean, I've seen the assessments myself as well, and I can see that there is a drop in some of the years where, like the scores have went from high to medium, and I appreciate that you can give back an assessment with every application that's successful. I've worked in organisations myself where, when you're successful, it's not the first thing you're looking for is that assessment. But I mean, AC and I have funded Echo for 12 years, and roughly speaking, if you multiply the 113,000 per year, and I know there's been times where there's been different little bits of money given to Echo as well for different things. Even if you just do the 113,000 a year, that's 1.356 million over 12 years that AC and I have funded Echo. So, as a major funder to that company, I would be very concerned that when that assessment process is being done and it is gradually dropping year after year, there's been no engagement with Echo to let them know that that's been happening, or not that I know of anyway, with my discussions with Echo, so, is there no sort of good governance there or anything where you would let them know that, you know what, I'm just giving you a wee heads up, we're not as happy this year as we were last year, or, you know, because at the end of the day, it's an organisation, it's the building, it's the staff, it's the community, everything is losing because everybody's losing out because of this complete cut in funding. So I'm just really concerned about the process that was in place, that at no point was there engagement with Echo to let them know that they were potentially going to fall off that cliff edge.
Thank you for your question. The assessing officers of all who assess the applications and who have a portfolio of clients would either have meetings online throughout the year or would attend events and would have a dialogue. So I don't accept that there's no communication during the year.
Sorry, if you're in the gallery, you need to remain silent, please.
I don't accept that. And sorry, I have to hold on to it the whole time. Yeah. Oh, you turn yours off.
Oh, sorry.
We accept every application as it comes in. We can't sit down with every single client and talk about an application that's coming into a competitive round.
Thank you. And I just want to come back in on that. It's just, you know, that huge figure, and that's not including the other wee pots of money. Like 1.356 million is a lot of money to not be engaging more regularly and to let an organisation know that they are at the risk of losing their core funding. And on a conversation with Echo, I'd asked them how many times in 12 years that ACNI had been to their events, and they said 5. So if there is continual engagement happening and meetings happening year in, year out with an organisation that's being funded, that's not the evidence that they're giving us.
Would you like to respond?
I haven't got the details of every time that assessing officer has been to see the client. I know they've attended work performances. I know they've done that as recently as the last Festival of Movement. But I don't have that exact detail, and we don't prescribe to any of our offices that there has to be a certain amount of meetings. Most meetings, to be honest with you, would happen online now. You know, we don't have the capacity as an organisation to. We don't have enough staff. We don't have the capacity to meet every single client, every single opportunity. It's just not possible. But my staff and the assessing staff who are involved in this application, they followed the process that they're employed to do so.
Can I just make an additional point as well? Obviously, as I'm sure people around the room know, although their application was rejected for AFP, they were given what we call a soft landing of 28,000, which is essentially kind of 3 months worth of what their kind of normal grant would be. Not every client that exits the AFP portfolio is supported in that way, but we wanted to support Echo, and so, you know, we put that case to the board and they approved it. We then directed them towards the National Lottery project funding, which is our second largest funding programme, grants of up to 75,000. They were directed towards it in their rejection, the initial kind of decision letter, and then they were directed towards it again when we met them in the kind of the mandatory pre-meeting. So we encouraged them to apply the National Lottery project funding scheme. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they chose not to. But, you know, in the normal kind of course of things, essentially anybody who exits the AFP portfolio very often does move into the NLP portfolio that year at least. But for whatever reason, they chose not to make that application.
That was an award of up to £75,000, which, whilst is less than the £112,000 they would normally receive under AFP, when you add the £28,000 they received for the soft landing, it comes to 103. I mean, I would have expected, perhaps also with the council, and obviously your very clear concern about the future of the company, that perhaps an emergency package could have been applied for. In addition to that, we have other funding programmes which are opening up, smaller ones too. But I have to say, we were surprised not to receive an application. £75,000 is not an insignificant sum.
I'm sorry, I don't want to dominate this, but I just want to come back in on that, and then I'll so just first thing I want to say is, you know, the soft land, and given that support, the support would have been in engaging with them more over the past 5 years and getting them to a stage where they weren't actually having to do what they're doing now. So I needed to say that first before I say anything else. In terms of that lottery funding, my understanding is that it's the overlap in funding. It doesn't work, that it can't be funded by both at the same time. I might be wrong in that, but that's is
You're completely mistaken. You know, habitually, AFP, all long-term AFP clients that exit the portfolio are, you know, sometimes given soft landing, sometimes not, but they're always directed towards NLPF, the National Lottery Project Funding Programme. There's no issue of kind of overlapping funding. I don't know where that's arisen from or who's led you to believe that, but that's not correct, no.
I mean, that's why we encouraged them in the first letter that they received to say they hadn't been successful, that they could apply to National Lottery Project funding. Then in the subsequent meeting, we said it again.
Okay, so the next indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin. Sean?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the representatives of the Arts Council for coming in today. I think you surprised some of us by agreeing to come in. And I also want to just acknowledge the support for Echo Echo. There's many of the Echo Echo workers there, the artists, but there's also many supporters. And I think that what became clear when this announcement came was there was utter shock across the city and the district that a devastating cut that would probably shut Echo Echo down was on the way. And that's why Equity organised a rally in the city centre, attended by 300 people with the backing of all the trade unions in the city, the backing of all the political parties, the backing of many organisations that see the important work that Echo Echo does, came out in support of that. And there's really been a united message coming, I think, from Derry, including from the council, about this decision. And it is a shocking decision. And I think it's very damaging to the council area, to the city and to the district. It's damaging, obviously, in terms of the jobs. It's damaging in terms of the access to the arts that people have here. And I'm going to come back to that. But it's also damaging in a context where the Waterside Theatre closed over a year ago, which was not a good thing. And we're, as a council, and many of us as councillors and campaigners, and doing our utmost to try and turn the corner here in terms of the lack of funding that we believe that we receive in the arts and culture sector and in many other sectors, rail and everything else. And so this just seemed like, for many people, an attack not just on Echo Echo and the arts sector, but an attack on the city. So the strength of feeling, I don't know if that's apparent to people in the Arts Council. And one of the issues is the disconnect that exists, because it is a rarity for people from the Arts Council to actually visit Derry and to visit many of the organisations. That seems to be, when I talk to arts organisations, and I'm a member of the Arts and Culture Co-Delivery Group with other councillors here, the lack of engagement, and I mean people visiting the actual organisations that are maybe funded to see the work that they do on a regular basis, it does not happen systematically. And I think that is a big issue. So in the decision to cut the funding was an assessment that the work that Echo Echo does, to be blunt, was, I mean, the Arts Council was saying it's rubbish, and that it doesn't deserve funding. And so there's over 150 individuals and organisations that have responded to that about the work that Echo Echo does. A wide range of opinions reflecting the wide range of engagement. And what you're saying to the people of Derry who actually go and see Echo Echo on a regular basis is that what you think is quality isn't actually quality. And I think that is a devastating critique of the Arts Council, to be quite honest. My children have went to see the events that have been put on by Echo Echo, and I actually went around and asked other people in the arts sector, is this the right decision? Is Echo Echo's work below par? Is it below standard? And people were actually, across the board in the arts sector, aghast at that idea. So there, I think that there is something fundamentally wrong with the way that this decision has been made. And there's two things that flow from it. One is I do see this as a political attack. I think that we as a district and as a council and as an arts sector have been critical about the way that the Arts Council distributes its funding, and critical also about the way that the department oversees that. And to be honest, some people like Steve Batts have been some of the most informed people around making that critique. Not alone, there's many people, but to see his organisation be attacked in this way that would basically be shut it down, I can't disconnect the idea that this was a political hit job. So the second thing is that in terms of provision, in terms of what Echo does and dance, there is no plan. You're actually denying the district access to the type of work, cultural work that they do. There's a flimsy kind of, we have other organisations in line now to kind of take up what they've been doing, but it's not a serious plan. It really isn't serious. It looks like it's been thrown together as a justification to say, oh, but we have an alternative here now. There's no alternative in place to actually deliver what Echo does in terms of dance for our city and district. It does not exist. And that seems to me to be a disregard of the district and the city and the people in it. And that's why this is so serious. And that's why people are absolutely furious, because it just seems like a continuation of a lack of appreciation for the what people need access to in the city and district. That there is no, so that's a question to you about the provision, the organisations that are apparently going to take over the work that they do. It's not a serious, there is no serious plan to replace what Echo does. And that's why it looks like it was a response that came about because you hadn't really thought about it.
Can I just say, first of all, that I can't stress enough that this is a heavily scrutinised process, as all our programmes are. You know, the guidance notes publish the actual assessment process from stage 1 to the final stage. That's the process that we follow. This isn't in any sense any kind of political hit job. We have to follow the process that we publish. The independent review that's just been undertaken obviously indicated that that did happen, and there was no issue with the kind of process that we followed. There's a number of criteria. None of them are political. We follow the processes we have done every other year, and the outcome is as disappointing as it is for the group, and we fully understand that. There's absolutely no question that this has anything to do with anything other than the application that was submitted, how it fared in the context of this funding round. There's nothing else is relevant. Second thing I would say is that both in the assessment, which I know the group have and many of you have seen, and in our meetings with the group, we actually did highlight what we viewed as the strengths in their application, and which was particularly around kind of community engagement work, which is why, although we don't offer everybody a soft landing, they were offered the 28,000, and they were directed towards the National Lottery Project funding programme. And also, as Gilly kind of indicated, we also had highlighted the likes of REAP and other programmes that they've kind of received funding for. So there's no question. It's not a matter of saying that we think, your words, that their output is rubbish. It was a matter of, in the context of the annual funding programme, they weren't accepted for that programme, but we were directing them towards other programmes. And as I say, had they put in an application, I don't doubt that they would have had a strong chance of being competitive in those rounds. So there's no issue around that. And if we had thought they were, again, your words, rubbish, we wouldn't have offered them, a soft landing and encouraged them to kind of go into AFP. Secondly, in terms of the kind of the additional provision for the Northwest, I mean, obviously, when we make the decisions and when we bring the recommendations to the board, we look at the sector in the round, and of course, we were obviously cognizant that there would be a dip in provision in relation to the Northwest, and there was no wishy-washy plans. We actually put additional money into the 3 other dance companies specifically tied to provision in the Northwest. So that was a very concrete move that we made to shore up provision in the Northwest, and to see how it could be potentially better developed in relation to that.
It's also not a long-term plan. It was what we came up with in the very immediate situation that we were faced with. And we've been working with those other dance organisations to find out what they can deliver, and they have come back with proposals. We weren't proposing that they take over Echo or, replace the organisation. And clearly, if we want to be really straight here, we have to work with you too. We have to work with your council officers and indeed the sector to come up with a new solution. The fact remains, they fell off the list in this particular programme, but we did provide them with a soft landing. I have to say there was another organisation that came off the list, no soft landing at all. And that's because we wanted to ensure that there was a process where they could transition from the AFP programme to a new programme, and they didn't choose to apply to that.
Yeah, look, the soft landing appears to me to basically be a way to wrap up what you're doing and have the procedure for redundancies. So that's one thing. I mean, £28,000 will not allow them. It's not a solid basis to be even to exist for another year. Echo's basically flapping right now, and the organisations that you are saying that you don't have a long-term plan to deliver dance in Derry in the northwest. Two are based in Belfast and one is based in Enniskillen, and it's unclear to us because we've looked at this if they are going to actually be able to do that, or if they want to do that, or if they ever knew that this was going to be an assignment that they would ever be given. And that's a serious issue. And we're also talking about like local workers, an organisation that has built up decades of confidence. And this is what I'm getting at about the assessment, your assessment that their work is not worth the funding of the Arts Council, where people in Derry think that this is of a high standard and actually have systematically engaged with it. And so there's something amiss here in terms of like what is viewed as quality from the Arts Council and then is viewed by our council, by the people in the district, and by people across our art sector, who are also, I would say, experts in viewing art, although it's it's always an individual opinion. But there wasn't a reaction in Derry and across our district that said, you know what, their work had really fallen behind over the last number of years. Clearly something was going to happen. That's not what happened here. This is not what seemed to be the response. And it is also the case, look, this is not the first time the Arts Council has been at a committee meeting. I mean, we have had you in here in the last couple of years to talk about regional imbalances. And we've had arguments where you have said there's no regional imbalance. Derry, where we believe that there is a regional imbalance, a legacy of regional imbalance. And the Arts Council seems to go back and forward on whether or not that's true. And it is the case, look, that we met recently with representatives from the Department for Communities, and we had an open conversation with them about the Arts Council and about decisions that the Arts Council makes and about the structure of the Arts Council and about the processes that the Arts Council have and about, and I think, so, and then the next thing we hear is that that Echo's basically its funding's getting cut to the point where it's likely it'll be closed very soon. So it's not a hard leap for a lot of us to make that like there's more going on here than an assessment about a particular art organization and their work, when many people think that the quality of the work is actually quite high. So you can see how people came to a particular view, and this just, there's the issue of provision, but this just adds to the feeling that there is something not quite right here. And that, I don't think that we're going to get, in terms of today, look, there will be a rallying around to defend decisions that are made because, as has been pointed out, if you funded an organisation for a long time and handed over a lot of money, and then all of a sudden decide that organisation shouldn't be funded because the quality of its work isn't good enough, well, what does that say about your decisions over the last decade or longer about how you justify the previous work that they did? This just seems another oddity that doesn't add up when we try to figure out how has this decision come to be?
Can I just say again, with all due respect, you've said again that this is a decision that the Echo isn't worth the Arts Council's money. That's just factually incorrect by the fact that we actually have given them £28,000 as transition funding out of the programme. So we actually we've given them funding straight off the bat, and that's actually a larger award than many organisations that we've funded for many, many years receive on an annual basis. And again, as I say, we encourage them to come into the NLPF programme where they would have been very competitive again within that round, but they chose not to do that. So at no point have we said that they're not worthy of our money, because we've actually given them £28,000 and encouraged them to kind of come in for additional funds.
Okay, so I've got 3 more indicated speakers. Next is Alderman Hussey, followed by Alderman Middleton online, and then finally Councillor Donnelly. So Derek.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. As you know, I'm not a member of committee. And I declare, I don't know anybody sitting in that gallery. I don't know anybody. But the concerns that I have are just as genuine as my colleagues who know the folk here. I think you said they weren't successful in their application. I would dispute that. They were successful. They reached the threshold. You made the determination. They reached the threshold, but you made the determination that where you were drawing the line and you weren't prepared to award the grant. You've admitted by the fact that you have, I think it was Councillor Harkin who outlined there, you have admitted that a vacuum has been created because you have invited or support 3 other groups to come in and try and fill that vacuum. Who created that vacuum? The Arts Council. And can I say it's the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, not the Belfast, not the Southwest. It's the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. And we've heard it time and time again about the differential between East and West. And this is an exemplification of that. You talked about the 28,000. I don't know how much is going to those other 3 groups to help fill that vacuum. But why could that not have been lumped together and gone to Echo to allow them to continue the good work that they've been doing? It's a real concern for all of us in the Chamber in Derry City and Strabane as to how we are treated compared to others. And I feel that there's a failing of the Arts Council. And I said again, the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. We are just as much part of Northern Ireland as anywhere else. And I would ask you to seriously look at the vacuum you have created in our part of the country. Thank you.
Again, I'm repeating myself a lot. They were given the 28,000 as transition funding out of the AFP programme. We encouraged them to come into NLPF because, as we acknowledged in the assessment and indeed when we spoke with them, that there were elements of their programming that we would be interested in supporting, and particularly around kind of community engagement. So had they decided to kind of apply to the NLPF, they could well have continued to kind of deliver that funding. I mean, the 28,000 3 months, NLPF decisions come out in July. We're also aware that the group have relatively, compared to many of our organisations, very comfortable reserves. That's relative, obviously, but they had reserves there. So they could still be delivering throughout the year, potentially, had they chosen to come into NLPF. And I just want to kind of just say very briefly, and I know that there've been many discussions with the council around the issue of relative funding across Northern Ireland, etc. And I just want to reiterate what we've said many times. I mean, Derry City and Strabane, over 11.6% of our funding goes to the Derry City and Strabane District Council area, which is, of course, well above what the actual population proportion is for the area. So, we would say that.
And I just add as well that just in relation, Councillor Harkin's comments about the other arts organisations, there were other arts organisations that received increases in Derry this year.
Absolutely.
So, well, no, it's an important fact. I mean, it's a fact. So, I mean, again, I'm kind of trying to counter argue this idea that there's a political motivation behind it, because I think you're giving us too much power. We don't have that power. Our assessing officers are workers, as I'm sure you understand, and they work very hard to do their job. They are paid to have an artistic opinion. That's what they're paid for. That's what our staff are paid for in the Arts Council. No member of staff sits there and makes decisions on their own. They make an assessment. It goes through a very robust period of at least 3 moderations where their assessment is explored, looked at. We look at the challenges, we look at the gaps that may be created by not funding that organisation, and then that's presented to the board. And it's the board of the Arts Council that make those decisions. So I will stand by our robust procedures. And I will say that, yeah, we are employed to have an artistic opinion. We are the Arts Council. I'm not saying we're the be all and end all, but that is our job.
Okay, so next indicated speaker is Alderman Middleton. Julie?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. On behalf of the DEP, we would like to thank the representatives who have come here today from the Arts Council. We concur with the previous speakers regarding the devastating blow that Echo has had to face with the loss of funding, substantial loss of funding, and the subsequent loss of appeal. The impact here in the Northwest will no doubt be profound. I would just like to query one thing in particular, and that is as to whether there are any further steps at all that Echo can carry out with the Arts Council, or processes that can be carried out now that the appeals process has completed. And just to be clear, I'm not asking about other funders, only the Arts Council. Thank you.
Well, as we advised Echo when we issued the outcome of the independent funding review, that's our internal process is complete. The next stage for them, which we signposted them to also, should they wish to take it, is of course the Ombudsman, and they are very free to kind of take that route and make applications in that direction. In relation to funding, again, we were surprised and disappointed that they didn't apply to NLPF. That is our second largest programme. There will be other programmes open throughout the year. One of them is REAP, which they've received funding from before. And of course, we would always encourage any organisation to kind of come in and apply to any of our funding programmes for which they are eligible. And we would certainly do the same for Echo.
So, Councillor Donnelly, Gary?
I'm sure you'll forgive me for not thanking you, because I don't think I have anything to thank you for. Look, I've sat and I've listened to what you've said there, and there's nothing in it. Numerous occasions you've mentioned the soft landing, as if we should be appreciative, or as the people in this, or the hundreds of people affected should in some way. It's akin to giving somebody a carriage clock after 40 years of service, made a 10, or what, in my opinion, you've effectively passed a death sentence on a very valued institution in the city and said it's okay, we'll pay for your headstone. There is nothing that you have said here today. Absolutely nothing. You talk about that the group could apply for National Lottery funding when you know that that would exclude them from your funding, from Arts Council funding. You talk about increases, and other groups have received increases, but them increases don't add up to what you have taken from Echo. So please don't come here and try and blow smoke in our faces. You carried out, who carried out the review? Why all the secrecy? Why would not tell people, there's documents there, either they're withheld, or at least you didn't tell people that they could have access to them. And when they did eventually get access to them, they differed greatly from the feedback. The assessor's report differed greatly. When I got involved in this, the first thing I read was what came from yourselves. And I was going, what kind of cowboys are Echo? And it was only after a large number of subsequent meetings and conversations that I realised they were basically stitched up. They were shafted. And what it was basically baseless nonsense in the reports, and didn't add up to what was going on on the ground and the activities that Echo were carrying out. And if you look at the response from right throughout the world, from Russia, Romania, all over the world, of the sadness at what you have done to Echo. How Derry and Strabane can be better served by dance organisations from Belfast or Enniskillen is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. What was the matrix for the comparison for all our companies? And it's my opinion that Echo have been punished for speaking out and challenging the Arts Council. And there's a fear from all our groups in this city and district that Echo is bleeding out and they can't speak out because they're going to be targeted next. And that is a very, very palpable. And what happened here was a slash and burn. And to be honest, I've seen more accountability in some army councils than I have seen with the Arts Council. I don't have a question other than, have you got an impact assessment and where is it? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor, and obviously you won't be surprised to hear me say that I strongly contest. We would very much disagree with all of them.
I just want one point of clarity. Echo were eligible to apply for National Lottery project funding. It's our funding. It's not another funding pot. We administer it. So there was no issue with them applying for that funding.
And nor would there be any issue with them applying for and receiving National Lottery project funding and then subsequently attempting to re-enter the AFP portfolio in the following year. Had they applied for National Lottery project funding, we might have been in a situation in the Northwest where we had 28,000 to Echo plus their National Lottery project funding award plus the additional 71,000 that was given to the other arts organisations to kind of develop provision in the Northwest. And I think I would say I would kind of go back to the point about the strengths in their application were highlighted to them in relation to community engagement, and that's how we saw the area of their work that we wanted to support. Whereas they were more suitable for NLPF rather than AFP, and the sort of provision that would be supplied by the other organisations that were given additional money would be less around community engagement projects and more around the professional development of dance as a practice in the Northwest. So providing opportunities for young dancers to kind of develop and network and improve their opportunities in the sector.
Look, what you've done to young dancers in this city and beyond is absolutely shocking. And again, you're again trying to claim credit that people got increases. It didn't add up to anywhere near the money that you took from Echo. Is that right? And have you done an impact assessment on the damage that this is going to do, having effectively closed it down?
In the context of the moderation process, we look in the round, not only the entire portfolio, but also at each sector within the portfolio. And so in the context of the dance sector, having agreed that Echo weren't appropriate for the portfolio rather, we then looked at how we would increase provision in relation to professional development of the arts in the Northwest, with the view to, as we did, encouraging Echo to apply the National Lottery project funding, through which they could have gotten an award up to £75,000, through which we would have supported the community engagement aspects of their work.
Look, you haven't answered the questions. In fact, you remind me of somebody who's just sitting in a police station repeating a prepared statement.
Okay, so I've 3 more indicated speakers and then we're going to have to move on. So there's Councillor McDade, Councillor Mooney, and then Councillor Anelis one final time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I will thank you for coming down, because it's probably brave, to be honest with you, because it's rare that right across the chamber you have agreement on absolutely everything. And right across the chamber, across all parties and independents here, we all agree that something has gone wrong here. A few times, Councillor Harkin and Councillor Neelis have mentioned the lack of meaningful engagement from yourselves with Echo. And I was just watching your reactions when other people were talking, and like it's not giving me great confidence, to be totally honest with you. I think that engagement, if everyone is telling us from Echo and from the sector that there's not good engagement, we're going to believe them. So I just wanted to put that on record. Also, Alderman Hussey made the point, and actually everybody's making the point about regional imbalance, and it's there. There's no doubt about it. And the Arts Council were down last year, and I don't know if it was full council or B and C, but they were down, and we've had this, and they came in and they tried to say the same thing, but the facts and the figures were there. And Councillor or Chair here, Rory Farrell, is our maths was here, and he had it all worked out. And I mean, definitely there is definitely an imbalance there. I have one question. And it's just about, you keep saying about this National Lottery Fund that they could have applied for. But I suppose if you, the same people, are going to provide the funding, so it's the same people going to do the assessments and everything else, and their feedback that they got for the initial application was so scathing and so negative, do you not think that maybe their confidence even in applying for another funding stream from the same organisation maybe might have been low? And perhaps that if there had been, again, back to the engagement piece, if someone had come down, had the conversation, talked them through it, told them you're going to be really competitive in this, maybe off the record, you're probably going to get this, then maybe they might have been able to apply for it. I just think that you can't knock someone back with really scathing, really negative feedback and then say, oh, but sure, we can give you money, our own money from another pot. So that's just my point. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know what more to say in terms of the application would have been welcomed. It was we encouraged them to apply. As I said, recommendations aren't made. Recommendations are made, but no decisions are made by one person. That goes through a moderation where other people, other specialists sit there, senior managers sit there, the chief executive sits there, and we go through various options. And then, of course, it goes to the board. I would say, and I don't have the facts on me, but most organisations that come off AFP and make an application to lottery project funding are usually successful in that first year of applying.
Thank you. And I'm actually going to agree with Councillor Donnelly. It just feels like this is just repeated now over and over and over again. And just if you repeat it, doesn't make it true. Thank you.
Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. And it's really just to pick up on a point raised by Councillor Donnelly when he was speaking. And I don't think he got an answer, but it was something I picked on. But it was essentially, I think that Echo make the case that the first time that he picked up on anything was to do with AFP was when they viewed the review report of last month. And what they're saying is their case is that they haven't seen that report, never outside of that report, never any knowledge of that report. So therefore they couldn't rely on that, the contents of that report. But the report, what it divulged to them, and obviously what the case they're making here is, and the question that Councillor Donnelly asked was that the contents of the email or the detailed email that they received in May significantly diverged from the contents of that AFP. To me, that's concerning because obviously it seems to be a breakdown in process or the procedure. It could possibly lead to some procedural unfairness through the process itself. But that's the case they're making, and that's the case that and the point I think is actually significant. It's been made by Councillor here, but I don't think you answered the question. But if there was any divergence from that email in May to what was contained in the AP assessment, can you account for that today? Thank you.
We obviously wouldn't agree that there was any divergence. One was a summary of the other. The issue has obviously kind of, in general, the assessment's gone to kind of independent review already. That obviously found in our favour. We signposted the group to the Ombudsman, which is the next step. And if they wish, they are free to take, make whatever arguments they wish, to the Ombudsman, and we will of course accept any outcome with regard to that.
And final speaker on this item, apart from me, is Councillor Anelis. Grace.
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair. It's just to really say, okay, so we all have severe issues with what's happened here, and we're all really feeling you know, the pain of this for our council area, that we are losing an arts organisation from our area, and we don't want this to happen. So really what my question for yourselves would be is, where do we go from here? As a council and as a corporate body, we would like, you know, to be, we will be supporting all arts organisations and, you know, different levels of capacity. And, you know, we do already support arts organisations through different funding streams, but we just want to know what we can do to help bring Echo back into the funding stream with yourselves. And if, you know, as a council, we are able to help them in some way, whether it be advice or whatever it is ACNI prepared to work with council and with Echo to bring them into next year's funding stream?
Well, we're always willing to speak with councils and about how to support the arts organisations within their areas. So of course, if council wants to kind of reach out to us, we can kind of have conversations about what any proposals that you might have. Always willing to do that. And the AFP will be open next year, and any eligible organisation can of course apply.
Thank you. It was warm when we came in here. It's got progressively hotter. So, as I said at the outset, I really want to thank you for coming, because you knew this was not going to be an easy discussion. You know, the people in the room, the councillors, you know, the members in the public gallery are passionate about Echo. They want to see the organisation survive. They want to see it thrive, but they need support from the Arts Council to do that. And I can't look past the assessors' reports, which over the past 5 years have got progressively worse. And I personally don't see how the Arts Council did not say to Echo, do you know what, folks? We have major concerns. We have growing concerns about your suitability for this funding pot. And, you know, as a real life example that everybody is going to understand is, in your place of employment, you know, you're going to be subject to annual appraisals about your performance. And if you go on year after year after year, your boss says nothing about concerns, and all of a sudden they go, I'm going to dismiss you. And you're like, what? Why? Oh, it's poor performance. I've had massive concerns about your performance over the years. And, you know, the person would rightly say, well, could you not have told me? You know, because that would be moving into sort of industrial tribunal territory. So I personally think there should have been an onus on the Arts Council to communicate those concerns and not to let them hide within assessors' reports that are not provided as routine. So I don't know how the Arts Council did that. You know, he's had concerns over the years. I've seen that in the reports. Echo knew nothing about these. And if they had seen these reports, if they'd been furnished with that information, if people had spoken to them about these concerns, I don't think we'd be here today having this discussion. I don't think Echo would be in the very, very precarious position that it's in. I don't think this city and district would be faced with losing such a cultural asset and the actual infrastructure that is attached to Echo. I think it's a really, really regrettable situation that probably could have been avoided if there was more communication, if there was more engagement. But we are where we are on this, and you know, I would echo, sorry, pardon the pun, I would echo the remarks of Councillor O'Neillis. You know, we as a council need to engage with the Arts Council about how there can be more support delivered to our city and district. And I heard, like, I've got a report here. It's a question from, you know, the Communities Minister answered on the 23rd of June, you know, so it's 2 weeks old. And it shows, you know, the funding allocations for the current year, last year, and the previous year. So in 2023-24, Derry and Strabane got 13.2% of the funding. Belfast got 79.7%. In this current year, Derry and Strabane's down to 11%, and Belfast up to 81%. So the trajectory for here is downwards. The trajectory for Belfast is on the rise, and we're not happy with this. We've had this out with the chief executive in the Arts Council, the former chair of the Arts Council. They said there wasn't an issue with regional balance. We know there is, and Echo was a casualty. So that's our view. We're determined to work with the Arts Council. We're determined to work with DFC to get more money under the city and district, and that's a challenge for us. And I understand there are funding challenges in terms of the funding envelope from DFC. I get that, fully get that, but we're not happy. But it's the people in the public gallery are going to suffer as a result of this.
Sorry, Chair, could I make one last statement? I just want to, we would obviously contest the statement that they'd been given no indication that we had no concerns around their performance. And also, and just to kind of emphasize again that I've lost my train of thought now because people in the gallery, but you know,
I would just like to finally say that, yes, I think we all want to work together. And I know that, you know, with Aideen and John in the council offices, and indeed with the organisation. And it will probably have to have a very difficult conversation. I mean, we're here today to have that, and you know, we've been shown the love by some councillors, and we will have that difficult conversation. We will sit down because I mean, an assessment was carried out. It went through the process. It's been upheld by an independent reviewer, and the next stage, if they so choose to do it, is the Ombudsman. But we will have a difficult conversation. But we are willing to have that conversation. And of course, we're willing to work with your council officers.
I'm sorry. Stand on. Sorry. Standing orders dictate that people in the public gallery cannot speak. I would like to allow you to do that, but unfortunately I can't. Sorry.
Just to say, you know, we understand how disappointing an outcome this is, particularly for the people in Echo, and we're willing to speak with Derry City Council. We're willing to have any kind of conversations that we can within what we actually kind of can do. But we understand the disappointment and expected it.
Thank you. So I'm going to suggest a 5-minute recess. All right, folks, so I had suggested a 5-minute recess. We probably had a bit more than initially indicated. So we're going to try and get through the rest of the agenda. Chairperson's business, I have 2 people that have been in touch regarding Chairperson's business. The first one is Alderman Middleton. Julie?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. I wanted to offer a warm and very enthusiastic congratulations to all those involved in the hugely successful All-Ireland Pipe Band Championships held in Ebrington Square on Saturday. Bands from Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, Belgium, and the USA took part in a fabulous, really fabulous competition showcasing culture, heritage, and musicality. The district-wide fringe events were well received and well attended, with the week proven to be a huge success. Well done to all: Alistair, the RSPBANI, the Executive Office, the IPBA, and indeed each and every piper, drummer, drum major and spectator. It was just so wonderful, and here's hoping we see another one. Thank you.
No indicated speakers in the chamber, Julie, but I would like to echo those remarks. I visited Ebrington on Saturday afternoon with my daughter, and I had never seen as many kilts and sporrans in one location ever in my life. I thought it was a really interesting event. It just brought so much colour and excitement to the city. So let's hope it returns in the future. Alderman Hussey.
Yeah, just briefly to echo those remarks. Particular interest to me was obviously the fringe events, and particularly the one in the Derg area. In fact, 2 of them were in the Derg area. They were well supported and excellent events. And as I say, it's already been the thanks has gone out there, but to the events team and everyone involved internally on that. And to echo your own words, let's have more of it. Thank you.
Okay, so next item in Chair's business is Alderman Guy. Darren?
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your position as Chair. I wasn't at the last meeting. And just to echo the words of the previous speakers on the Pipe Band Championships, I didn't get them because I was working, but I've seen plenty of videos and it seemed to be a good event by all. So congratulations to everybody involved in running that event. Thanks, Chair, for actually letting me bring this in. I'd emailed all members last night. I was contacted by one of the history teachers in Foyle. And we all know there's been a bit of tit for tat that goes on at this time of year. And there's a few things that people are working behind the scenes to get returned to both sides, like, you know, because there's things that mean a lot to people. But there's also this here where it's great historical significance. On the day President Kennedy was shot, this flag was the one that was flown at the old Yankee base, as we called it, in that area. And one of the ex-US veterans that was there at the time and who actually removed the flag later on that day, brought it to Foyle just there a couple of years ago and presented it to Foyle College. So they fly it now always on the 4th of July. So it's great historical significance and they would just like the flag back. So if anybody knows anything or anyone or can have a word with anybody that might be able to get the safe return to the school, it would be very much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
No problem, Darren. I wasn't personally aware of the significance of the flag, and I think it is right that the flag is returned to the Foyle College. So thanks for raising that publicly. So there's no more Chair's business. So we're going to go on to matters arising from the previous Business and Culture meeting held on the 10th of June. So any matters arising? Or Councillor Harkin?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in. And I have two items. The first one is BC 11025. And I and others have agreed to try and use our platforms to speak about what's happening in Gaza at every opportunity. And whether it's a committee meeting or full council, And I have to say that I was, I was angered and alarmed to see Palestine Action being prescribed by the British government last week. I think that this is a shocking decision and will have all sorts of implications for the right to protest. And given that we are a city associated with the struggle for civil rights, I think that it is will be particularly felt here. Our council did agree to write to the British government, calling on it not to prescribe and ban Palestine Action. And in that same motion, we stood in solidarity with the efforts of people in Britain, across Ireland and across the world to do everything they can to stop genocide. And that remains the case. And I think that the Palestine Action, what the British government has done, it's not about cracking down on one form of dissent or attempt to stop genocide and expose the hypocrisy of the British government. This is about, they seem to be going after, and it's true here as well, if you look at some of the charges that are being brought against campaigners, there's an attempt to silence the Palestine Solidarity Movement, but it's backfiring. And there is a discussion now here about what this prescription will mean. I mean, I myself at the Irish Congress of Trade Union Council meeting that was held last week before this prescription was put through, declared myself with other delegates there a supporter of Palestine Action, and I still am a supporter of Palestine Action. I think that they have been very brave in their attempt to disrupt the war machine that is going to slaughter Palestinian babies. And we think about our city, in terms of what the Palestine Action activists have done, it's been pretty mild in terms of putting paint on fighter jets and breaking into Israeli-owned arms companies. But here in Derry, I mean, we had Raytheon here, and people occupied it, decommissioned it, and were able to successfully go to court to argue that, and Councillor Donnelly is here, he was one of the participants, and he won't mind me saying, went to court to say that that they hadn't committed a crime because they were actually stopping a bigger crime, and that bigger crime was Raytheon's involvement in Israel's war against Palestinians, and that that's what they were acting on. And the judge in that case found them to be innocent of the charges that were being brought against them. So the jury did. There could have been a situation where the company, Raytheon, was actually going to be found guilty of aiding and abetting war crimes against the Palestinian people. So I just think that, like, given that we have a motion that will be sent to the British government calling them on them not, clearly the British government is trying to could potentially criminalise this council for its perceived support of Palestine Action, and our argument that, like, the attempt to silence Palestine solidarity activism is completely hypocritical. So, Chair, I just wanted to get this on record because it's the first opportunity we've had as a council to discuss the prescription that was put through by Starmer's government in the last week. And I think that this will not slow down Palestine solidarity activism. I think people will continue to act. And I think that given what's happening in Gaza today, when you look at the plans that the Israeli government have released to create a humanitarian city in Rafah, the hypocrisy of it is going to drive more people in the activism, no matter what the consequences will be for them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor McDade, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Harkin. I suppose just to associate yourself with a lot of what Sean's already said, and I was writing as you were chatting, just to sort of say that Palestine Action had produced a documentary, which I watched before it was proscribed, and if I watched it now, I think I could be arrested for supporting an organisation of terrorism. But I watched it last week before it was official, and they actually talked about Raytheon and how the Raytheon activists had inspired them. And in Derry, the Raytheon the Raytheon people are like held up for their stance and their moral stance that they took and you know, and what they did for our city. So I think that it's important that we remember that. I mentioned it when we talked about this last month. This is a slippery slope. Now, at the minute, if somebody was to go out, they could be arrested for supporting a terrorist organization if they were holding a sign that said Palestine Action on it. And that's very different to being arrested for criminal damage or for disrupting the peace. And not that it's all bad, we shouldn't break any laws, but you know, I think that there's a big difference being made here, and it's a really scary time for any activists. And a lot of the people in the chamber here do join rallies and they do join protests. So I think that we need to be really clear that we do not agree with the prescription of Palestine Action. And something that I just learned, and because thankfully I've never been in this situation, but was that if you're arrested for supporting Palestine Action, you can't provide any of that evidence that the Raytheon activists were able to provide to show why you were doing it, because it's under the terrorism laws. So it's a very different, a very kind of scary place to be. So I just wanted to thank Sean for bringing it up and associate myself with his comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And the final indicated speaker is Councillor Donnelly. Gary?
Good, Chair, and thanks to the previous two speakers. I don't know if anybody's seen the scenes this week where an 83-year-old priest, female priest, was taken away and arrested and now faces 6 months in prison simply for having a sign. And this is a lifelong pacifist. And at the same time, we had the British Minister Lamy meeting Ahmed al-Shara, a head chopper offer, but he's our head chopper offer now, according to Lamy. So you have the ridiculous situation where you have a member of an organisation that frequently cut people's heads off, but because he's calling our tunes now, is not a terrorist and should be given millions of pounds. And you have an 83-year-old priest, a woman who was a lifelong pacifist, is now a terrorist sympathiser and supporter. You know, if that's not madness, what is madness? And I think it's important to remember why this happened. Is because those who, in my opinion, are heroes, and I watched the same film that Catherine watched, and you can't come away from watching that film and say that these people are terrorists. These people should be given medals. And I think what's happened is that, you know, in Britain, when these people went before courts with juries of their peers, ordinary, decent people in Britain found them not guilty. And they found them not guilty when it was laid out before them was, here's why we're doing this. Here is the end result. And that's why we're doing it. And they weren't getting the convictions. So if you're not getting the convictions, then let's label them terrorists, where we cut out all the crap about jury or their peers. And if anybody doesn't have concerns about that, then it's absolute madness. Everybody should, whether you agree or not, you should have concerns about the serious erosion of people's civil liberties. For my good, Chair.
Thank you, Gary. And the final indicated speaker is Councillor Hart. Brian?
Thanks, Chair. Just want to associate with the previous comments. When good people remain silent, that's when, you know, atrocities like we're seeing are happening. But there are good people that aren't remaining silent. We have had NECAP, Bob Vila, people that are speaking out of what's happening, Palestinian Action, or we have our own protests in Derry and Strabane regularly as well. I think it's just the hypocrisy of the Western governments that we're witnessing what's going on in Palestine at the minute, and they're just turning a blind eye. They're very vocal when it comes to Russia, and rightly so. But we're seeing worse excesses in Gaza than the Russians have virtually, you know, appeals on these insignificant. So I think people should rightly speak out. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And Councillor Harkin, you have a second item in matters arising?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. It's BC 115/25. And as a council, we have called on employers across the district to engage with trade unions and respect their workforce and respect their workforce's right to have trade union representation. And people will have seen in the last couple of days that the workers at City Hotel have decided to commence an industrial ballot. And SIP2 is their trade union organisation. Now, as people know, the City Hotel is an iconic organisation in this district. I've been there many times myself. There's been many trade union conferences held there, and they are having renovations right now. So it is disappointing that that workers feel the need to actually commence an industrial ballot. And I've spoken to quite a few of the workers who are trade union members. I've talked to the SIP2 organisers there, and they wanted to avoid this situation, and they've done a lot of work engaging with the management organisation and also making proposals to the labour relations organisation to work this through, because they avoid it becoming a public issue. But this is where we are now. So as a council that encourages all employers to be good employers to their workforce, to recognise trade unions, I think that I've sent a short proposal to Alex. I think we should make clear our solidarity with the City Hotel workers, many who have been there a long, long time, and that we should urge the City Hotel management to properly respect their workers, to properly engage with the trade union SIP2, and that to make sure that any proposals, particularly around redundancies, which is what is being proposed right now, it is done through all the proper mechanisms, legal, statutory, and through the collective bargaining process. And I think that that's what that's what we should expect of all employers. And I think we should send that message very clearly to City Hotel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. And I'm going to give members a minute to just consider the proposal. And the first indicated speaker is, are you going to second as well? So the seconder and first indicated speaker on that item is Councillor McDade. Catherine?
Thank you. I'm going to keep it very brief. I'm going to second the motion. Thank you, Councillor Harkin, for bringing it. And I think that, as already mentioned, that our council encourages all our employers to provide support to all employers within the city and district. And I think specifically around private sector, we need to be supporting our workforce, because the private sector is a lot harder to get a union in there. So we need to be supporting them to use their union and use it appropriately. So I think this is a good motion and it's appropriate and we should be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Any other speakers? Councillor Hart, Brian?
Yeah, we just support your motion. And, we've had a number of job announcements recently in Derry with BT and other businesses. So anything that we can do to protect the workers, we Sinn Féin would support it. Thank you.
Cheers. So I don't note any dissent in the chamber or online. So is everybody content? Yep. Fully supported. So any other items for matters arising? Nothing. Right. So we'll go on to the meeting proper. So item 8 is the update on strategic activities undertaken by the business support team. And that is Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek your endorsement of the inclusive entrepreneurship and outreach activities planned by the business support team for the current year. You'll be aware of a previous report that was taken to this committee around the strategic activities undertaken. It identified a set of strategic activities aligned under the 7 pillars listed in under section 2.1. Inclusive entrepreneurship and outreach has been identified as a key driver of economic development. And it's clear that it fosters greater participation from underrepresented groups and basically stimulates innovation and creativity across these groups. So with that in mind, the business support team is placing a particular emphasis on increasing inclusivity and accessibility within the region's entrepreneurial landscape. And and they're going to do it in the form of targeted outreach initiatives focusing on empowering those groups, such as women, young people, ethnic minorities, and individuals with disabilities, providing specific support to foster growth. So within the report, you can see that there are a range of sort of regional activities and then some localized ones. What I would draw your attention to is that in the previous years we had a budget of around, and this is 100% funded, by the way, under the Go Succeed programme, but we had a previous budget of 30,000 to do these types of activations. Under the new funding model, this has been reduced to 16,364. So the team are trying to be smart with the budget they do have and try and bring as much value as possible. So the three sort of key regional activities are listed there in 2.4. One is the Ultimate Pitch 2025. The other is the Enterprise Hub Programme, one that I think is a very, very good programme which is delivered through the further education colleges across Northern Ireland. And the third one is the Inclusive Entrepreneurship Programme. So, as I said, due to the reduction in the localised budgets, the team have been engaging with local stakeholders, looking to sort of maximise opportunities for collaboration for the events themselves. The local stakeholders, they were invited to submit potential collaboration projects focusing on igniting that entrepreneurial spirit. Those stakeholders are listed in 2.7. And in 2.8, it's detailed around the collaboration under opportunities under the theme of enterprise awareness were presented by the business team by the organisations listed in that area. So a breakdown of the costs are provided in Appendix 1, but the highlights include female entrepreneurship initiatives, working with Ulster University and the Awakening Hub, the Youth Entrepreneur Programme, rural roadshows, and that's building on other rural roadshows that the business team have delivered over the previous period, and really supporting entrepreneurship at a grassroots level, outreach to minority groups, a focus on a Global Entrepreneurship Week this year in particular. So in terms of the budgets themselves, they're listed in the appendix and highlighted obviously in 3.1. As I said, this is funding that's been delivered through the UK Chairperson funding, and it's 100% funded. And the recommendation is that members are asked to note the contents of the report and endorse the delivery of the proposed outreach activity.
Thank you, Kevin. So at present, we have two indicated speakers. The first is Alderman Middleton online. Julie?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you, Kevin, for the report. I think that the ideas and the plans look good, all in all, and I can see there's been a thorough piece of work that's been carried out, so thank you for that. I do want to ask, and I don't mean to sound rude, just in regards to the Inclusive Entrepreneurship Programme. For me, a minimum of one person per councillor and a minimum of one person per hour councillor seems extraordinarily low, and possibly could be seen as a little bit disingenuous amongst the community itself. Is there a reason why the minimum is only one? And also, how could we possibly maximise on more than one, please? Thank you very much.
I'm going to bring Kevin in on that, but Julie, are you prepared to propose this item?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Sweet. Kevin?
I need to check that. I genuinely don't know the answer. So just to check that that's not a typo.
Through you, Chair. Thanks, Kevin, for that. I'm sure if you can come back to us on it. And I didn't mean to sound disrespectful, but it's just because I work within the disability sector and I know the capabilities and the actual wonderful ideas that many, many have. Thank you.
Okay, so next indicated speaker is Councillor Unitas Grace.
Margaret, Rory. Well, sound coming off that. Thanks for the report, Kevin. And really, as one of the people that has been nominated for the enterprise workshops that myself and Alderman Hussey are attending at the minute, there has been real conversation about how, entrepreneurs, especially new entrepreneurs, navigate, how to where best to go for help in terms of depending on their their ideas, and especially those that are in the rural communities. So it's great to see something where it is, working with inclusivity and targeting particular audiences. I just have a question in around 2.7, if you don't mind. So it's saying there that local stakeholders were invited to submit potential collaboration projects. So for me, I would take it that they were obviously contacted. I'm just wondering, as like key stakeholders in our area, why are Northwest Enterprise and Strabane Enterprise not on that list? Were they asked? And if they weren't asked, why were they not asked? It's just, is there the local enterprise agencies and the contact point for the startup initiatives? I'm just curious to know why they're not on it. Thank you.
Yeah, basically because they are delivering the main element of the program. So they already run, I don't know the exact figures, but they run in the multiples of beyond 100, basically different types of workshops, engagement events, activation on behalf of Go Succeed on the main program. And this is the step outside of the main program, and it's the activation side of it. So they already do that, and they're actually within the overall program itself and contracted to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I see Councillor Heaney has indicated in the chat box that he's happy to second. Next indicated speaker is Councillor Alderman Hussey. Derek.
Thanks for the opportunity, and Kevin, you'll not be surprised at my question. When I look at the appendix and the location venues, I'm just wondering, where's the outreach to the rural communities?
So the venues haven't been confirmed just for the rural. It's to be confirmed within the actual appendix there. So there'll be delivery of enterprise support in each of the rural DEAs in collaboration with community partners.
But the vast majority of venues are basically city-based.
I would say that's true, yeah. But
you.
I would say that there's a specific rural element to it where the rural DEAs will be covered.
Okay, so that's been proposed and seconded, no dissent. So the next item is item 9. We've got 18 to take us through the Echo Dance Theatre Company update.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So members, we provided a lot of the detail in this report really so that you would have some of the background information to inform the presentation from earlier in committee. So I'm not going to go over a lot of the background because I think you're all well familiar with the situation at Echo. But this report relates, I suppose, so we've had some details from Echo, and I know a number of you have asked us to model a couple of scenarios and present some options to you. So it's clear, obviously, the withdrawal of the annual funding programme from the Arts Council and the withdrawal of this investment in Echo has significant implications for Echo as an organisation. And, obviously it raises serious concerns regarding the visibility and development of the cultural sector in the Northwest. The Echo have worked on modelled three potential scenarios for its financial and operational future based on its available reserves, existing income streams and potential for additional support. You'll see in the report there, scenario A is that there's no additional funding. The company would enter a managed wind down process beginning in July of this year. The studio is vacated and all programming ceases by the end of September. Core staff and ensemble contracts are terminated. Scenario B is that there would be short or medium-term bridging support with limited interim support from external sources. The company sustains a reduced programme through to March of 2026. While this does not provide long-term security, it offers critical additional time for the organisation to explore and develop alternative funding and delivery arrangements, including those outlined in Scenario C. It's important to note that such an interim investment would only be considered viable if there's a realistic prospect of Echo being eligible and competitive in a future application to the Arts Council annual funding programme. Confirmation of this would be required from the Arts Council in advance of any commitment of any bridging support. Scenario C would be a transition with a focus on securing AFP funding, building on the additional time afforded by short to medium term bridging support. The company prioritises preparations for reapplication to the AFP programme for next year. While it will be prudent for them to explore supplementary sources of income and cost savings, the realistic pathway to long-term sustainability would require the reinstatement of core AFP support. During this period, the company would seek constructive engagement with Arts Council as part of the reapplication process, while continuing to demonstrate the value, quality and impact of its work. A revised delivery model would be developed in parallel, enabling Echo to operate at a reduced but sustainable scale through to March 2026, with core programming and key staffing retained. The outcome, of course, then of the AFP reapplication would be critical to determine the company's viability. Council has, so a couple of points to know, Council, as you will be aware, has already awarded Echo the maximum of £17,000 this year under the Cultural Organisations Fund, 90% of which has been issued up front in line with standard arrangements, and 10% has been retained pending submission of an end-of-year impact report. But however, given the organisation's current financial position, it's recommended that this remaining 10% be released now to support immediate cash flow, with the impact report still to be submitted as scheduled in April 26. Members should note the monthly running costs for Echo are estimated at £14,000. If confirmation was received of willingness from the Arts Council to engage constructively with the organisation and council officers with a view to re-establishing AFP funding for the next financial year, it could be feasible with a number of other measures for members to consider some interim funding to sustain the organisation until the next financial year. The quantum of this could be discussed and brought to members in a full report for September committee. Members will be aware, without me having to explain to them, the implications of that and I suppose the significance of that. You know, we have already constrained budgets. This is an unusual situation, and however, it is possibly not without precedence, and it would be something that members would need to consider very seriously, and we as officers would need to and will advise members accordingly on that. Members, the purpose of this report really is for you to note the imminent threat to the sustainability of Echo as a result of withdrawal of core funding from the Arts Council. You're also asked to note that any consideration of interim or bridging support would depend on a clear and realistic pathway to long-term sustainability, including confirmation from the Arts Council regarding the potential for Echo to apply successfully to the 26-27 annual funding programme. And your members, you're asked to recommend that you instruct officers to engage with the Arts Council and Echo to establish if a funding package could support the sustainability of the organisation, and to establish the detail of that for presentation to the next sitting of this committee in September. And members, you're also asked, as noted in the report, to approve the release of the outstanding 10% of Council's Cultural Organisations Fund to Echo. Happy to take any questions, members.
Yeah, thanks for that update. I think everybody is acutely aware of the funding crisis that is faced by Echo. We had a lengthy discussion, a heated discussion. There was a lot of passion in the room. There was a lot of passion in the public gallery. People care about Echo, and we need to do what we can to ensure that it survives this storm. And we're all aware that without support from the Arts Council, the sustainability of Echo it's really a non-runner. So there needs to be support from the Arts Council. There needs to be support from central government. So we look forward to that paper in September, so we can see the detail. Personally, we had a difficult discussion with members from the Arts Council, but they have committed to engage with us. They have committed to engage with us to try and save Echo, to look at next year's funding pot. And I take them at their word on that. So the first indicated speaker is Alderman Guy. Darren?
Thanks, Chair. No, it's just for clarity. The funding from Council, does that cover like a part-time role as well in that there?
Well, they can claim, obviously the Cultural Organisations Fund is dependent on them having a member of staff, so they can claim really, I mean, any expenses, they submit a claim to that value to us, so it's not specified for what it's for. Yeah.
Darren, you spoke first. Are you proposing this?
I'm happy enough to propose. I suppose I'll back up what you said there, but it's a case of, could we even believe half the stuff that they did come out with today, and would they follow up on it? Because They certainly didn't help Waterside Theatre at the time when they could have contacted them before what happened as well. So as you say, we just have to take them in face value for it and hope that they follow through. So happy to propose.
Thank you, Darren. Next indicated speaker is Councillor Anelis. Grace.
Rory, and it's the bigger picture of all of this. It's not just Echo. It's what it means for the Northwest, what it means for the arts and cultural organisations in the Northwest. You know, how people feel about living here, working here. You know, being educated in the arts, and you know, feeling safe in where they belong, where they can work, and they can also, you know, perform their field. So for me, yeah, 100% really worried about Echo, but also the bigger picture, really worried about what it says to all artists who live in the Northwest. So I'm more than happy to second this, and I just want to put on record my thanks to the business and culture team, to the officers who have been working in the background and engaging, and it shows a really good positive view of how the council feel about Echo and about arts organisations.
Thank you, Grace. Next indicated speaker is Councillor Harkin. Sean.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thank you to Aideen for the report. And I want to thank council officers as well for doing this. And the key thing for me in here is that we are instructing you to basically work with Echo and the Arts Council to see if there's a way to sustain the organisation. Because the whole point of getting them in here today was to try and express our concern, anger, but our wish as well for Echo to continue to be able to deliver, you know, as a dance theatre here in the city and for the district. And so that's the positive thing that we want, and hopefully they will reflect on the message that was sent to them today, because I think it was a powerful message from the chamber, but also the fact that there was so many people here supporting it as well. And I know our council officers are fully behind this as well. So I think that we should do as a council everything we can to try and see if the situation can be salvaged. And that's what we're aiming to do. So I think that the contents of the report, I'm happy to support as well.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. So I've no more indicated speakers. Proposed by Alderman Guy, seconded by Councillor Anelis. No dissent, so that's approved. The next three items are open for information. Strabane Build, Labour Market Partnership, and the Local Economic Partnership update. Does anybody wish to raise? First hand to see is Councillor Hart. Brian?
Just in relation to Strabane Bid, I just want to thank council officers and the Strabane Bid team for all the work that they've been doing recently. I think we've seen that good work come to fruition with the recent summer jam and other activities around Christmas and the loyalty card. So just well done. Thank you.
Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all the officers for the report. I just want to speak on item 12, which is the Local Economic Partnership update. I think it's a great, good news story. I think it is another great announcement for the city and district, whereby we will see delivery of substantial benefits ranging from, you know, jobs, green developments, community cohesion, entrepreneurial growth. And I think it's also a great opportunity for the community wealth building aspect of it as well to be included, and all the plans that have been made in relation to skilling people up. And all of that in turn does ensure that long-term prosperity for the district. And I just wanted to mention as well the reference in the 2.2 paragraph, and you will see the four indicators there of the real living wage, economic inactivity, gross domestic household income, labour productivity. Those items are stuff that we constantly hear raised when we're talking in the anti-poverty task and finish group. We do have the local draft anti-poverty strategy. So I just want to say that this is a really good announcement, and it will, in effect, we'll be keeping an eye on it in relation to it going forward and how we are working out the actions of that strategy as well. So thanks very much for the report, and really looking forward to the action plan.
Alderman Hussey.
Different item, agenda item 11. Just to thank officers for bringing forward 3.11 and 3.12. As folk will know, that's something myself and I know other councillors have engaged on, trying to develop this type of training on plant and machinery. Extremely welcome. Also, Nadine will know the 3.2 fits well in with a meeting that we had earlier with the mayor and a couple of officers with regard to the potential for stewarding and road marshal training. And again, that's extremely welcome. I look forward to the fruition of those types of courses going forward. Thank you, Chair.
And Alderman Guy.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to go back to agenda item 10, and it's a part I picked out from it about the music trail that was held in Strabane recently. And it's where the PSNI indicated that antisocial behaviour reduced could be attributed to customers leaving premises at staggering closing times. Just want to point out, this happens every year with a jazz festival. And in all the years I've taxied, I've noticed that see major events within the city, staggered, people go home at staggered times. It works. Nobody's waiting any longer than 15 or 20 minutes for a taxi. So it could be the way of regenerating the nighttime economy in the city and in Strabane as well, because people won't go out late at night because they fear that they won't get home. They'll be sitting about waiting for a taxi. So is staggered closing times, which I've always said it is, but is that the way forward to basically reignite the nighttime economy in the city? Because more and more people are going out in the afternoon and going home at 9 or 10. And it just seems to be that sort of young group that's staying out later. And they're fighting for taxis after it. So something to consider maybe.
Do any of the council officers wish to come in on this? I know that we had like a working group or a briefing on a specific paper regarding the nighttime economy, but that was that last year possibly, was it? So Stephen, do you want to come on briefly on that?
Yeah, I suppose just to pick up on that, there's lots of things in terms of the nighttime economy. That'll be one item that was highlighted a couple of years ago with the report that we've done. There are moves at the minute in terms of the plan for neighbourhoods, and that's one of the issues that they are considering in that forum as to what we do with the nighttime economy and how we work that. So it'll be something we can feed back into them.
So no more indicated speakers on the open items. So I'm looking for a proposer to move on to confidential business. Councillor Hart, seconded by Councillor Hutton.